The panther chameleon is arguably the most popular species of chameleon, and no wonder. With knock your socks off color, it's hardy, and it's widely available as a captive bred juvenile. So all of these come together to make essentially the perfect chameleon. And since I've started the Panther Chameleon podcast, there have been a number of questions that have come to me from the community. And so I'd like to do a question and answer episode where I answer some of these questions. And if you have a question about panther chameleons that you'd like me to answer on the air, then at the end of this episode, I'm going to tell you how to do that. My name is Bill Strand. I'm the host of the Panther Chameleon podcast, and let's go ahead and get to these questions. The first question I'm going to be answering is, what is CITES? All it takes is being around the community for just a little bit of time, and you will eventually hear this word. CITES is an international organization. It's the CITES stands for Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. And this is an organization that countries of the world sign to, and they say, okay, we are going to have you be the central hub of deciding how many animals are going to be able to be traded over the year. And the reason why this organization was put together is because the countries of the world were concerned about species going extinct from overcollection. And this can be for anything that comes from an animal, whether it be for the pet trade or for, say, leather trade, animal products, eggs, anything that deals with a living animal. Now, how does this affect us with chameleons and specifically panther chameleons? So CITES as an organization is going to be looking at scientific population studies and is going to, for panther chameleons, is going to say, all right, with this population density over this range, this species can be exported in this amount of bodies and not affect the wild population. In the case of panther chameleons, the number's been about 2,000 to 3,000 a year. And so this has actually been in effect for, I'd say, like 20 years. It's been a long time that panther chameleons have been able to be exported every year. And the way this works is that Madagascar agrees with that number. 2023, Madagascar is able to ship out 3,000 panther chameleons, and that's to the entire world. Now, Madagascar, on its own volition, can say, no. We think that should be 1,000. And then only 1,000 are going to go out. So as far as the United States is concerned, or any of the European countries are concerned, they will not allow more than 3,000 to come out and be spread out around the world. And likewise, the countries like the United States can say, no. You know what? Even though there's a CITES quota for that, we're not going to allow that species in because we think that it should be protected more. And in Europe, they've done this with other species of chameleons, like some chameleons coming out of Cameroon. Even though there's a CITES quota for it, European countries say, no, we're not going to allow them in. Now, no organization or structure is going to be perfect. There's smuggling going on, and there's countries that don't agree with CITES, and so they don't care how many come in. And yes, chameleons are smuggled off of Madagascar and go straight to countries that don't adhere to CITES. But overall, CITES has been effective in mostly regulating the trade and keeping animals from becoming extinct. Now, within CITES, you're going to hear the term CITES 2 and CITES 1, and these are levels of protection. CITES 2 means there are going to be quotas that countries who sign on to CITES are going to have to respect. As I said, in panther chameleons, that's 3,000 individuals for the year 2023. And if you want to ship panther chameleons across country borders, you're going to have to prove that you got them legally. So right now, if you're in the United States and you want to send a panther chameleon up to Canada, you have to go through the process of getting CITES paperwork and an export permit, and the Canadian has to get the import permit. And to get that export permit, you need to show the CITES documentation that proves that these came in legally. And this is why it's really hard to send chameleons out across borders, is because how many of you actually got CITES paperwork with your chameleon? And many of us get these chameleons captive hatched. And so we'd have to go back to the breeders, but then the breeders got theirs captive hatched. And so how far down the line did that wild caught animal come in that had paperwork that we can use to show that this panther chameleon, even though it's been bred in captivity for 10 generations, I still need to show where the original panther chameleon came into the country. And this is why it's usually not done to export panther chameleons across country borders. It does happen, but it takes a lot of work. All chameleons, except for one, are CITES 2. There is only one chameleon that is CITES 1, and that's Brucessia perimata. That is a chameleon from Madagascar. CITES 1 means there is no trade. And say you got some before the chameleon went to CITES 1, and you can prove that you got them legally when they were CITES 2, you would still be denied. Now, as far as panther chameleons go, CITES gives a new quota every year. And for many decades, panther chameleons have always been on that list because panther chameleons are widespread across Madagascar. Now, that answers the question, what is CITES? But there is something that's very important that is now attached to CITES, and that is that CITES only works on species level. For example, in panther chameleons, all panther chameleons are first fur pardalis, which means that the blue forms on Nosy Be and the yellowish forms on Sambava and the rainbow forms of Ambanja and the pink forms on Karami, these are all considered pardalis. And you can see that if I took 3,000 individuals from, say, the small population on Nosy Fali, that's an island off the coast of Madagascar, I could very easily strip the entire island of panther chameleons, and that form would then become extinct. But then you say, wait a minute, wasn't the CITES numbers put into place to protect these species from going extinct? And you would be correct. And this shows a flaw in the way that CITES is put together. It doesn't even recognize subspecies. So for Jackson's chameleons, we know we have the Xantholophus, which is the large green form, Maramontanus, which is the very small form from Tanzania, and then in between there's jacksoni, which has the Machacos Hills and has a wide range of subspecies and probably species hidden in there, but they are all under the numbers of Jackson's chameleon. And so this is why it's critical that our taxonomists do their job and create different species. I mean, we take a look. I gave you an example of the panther chameleon. What about the Parsons chameleon, where we have yellow lip, orange eye, green giant, yellow giant, and Parsoni Christopher, which is a subspecies. All of those are exported under the Parsons quota numbers. Once again, though, those are different populations, and we could very easily lose one of those populations. They could go extinct in the wild if they are not broken up into different species. Now, what is the solution to that? And I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that, and that would lie within the scientists that are working to make CITES function. Okay, let's go on to our next question. Here we go. This next question comes from Instagram, a TraumaDoc13. Where do I get chameleon food? Okay, yes, this is a great question for people starting out. When you first start out, you got your chameleon and you know that chameleon needs insect food, but where in the world do you get that? Yes, you can go to Petco and PetSmart or any pet store around you, and you can buy crickets for 10, 15 cents each. And that tends to get a little bit expensive. And then you're told that chameleons need variety. So where are you going to get all of these feeder insects? And so if you're tired of buying a little bag of crickets from the pet store every week, you can go online and you can find companies that specialize in breeding feeder insects. So go to your favorite search engine, Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever, and type in feeder insect or reptile feeder insect, and a number of companies are going to come up that will give you a variety of feeder insects, from crickets to different species of roaches to black soldier flies, wax worms, super worms. It's amazing how many insects we have available to us. And so what you want to do is go through a number of those names and find one that's geographically close to you. Because I will tell you, when you start going with a feeder insect company, number one, you're going to have to buy in bulk, and they work with you. So it's not like you have to buy 1,000 crickets at a time. You can buy less than that, but they're going to have to ship it to you. And that's going to have to go pretty much overnight to make sure that those insects arrive alive. And so you're going to want to find a company that's geographically near you so that shipping cost isn't astronomical. So Trauma Doc and everybody else who is trying to make that jump from your local pet store to a feeder insect company, do a search and find one that is geographically close to you. All right, let's see. The next one is from Diego Perez on Instagram. I think my chameleon has a respiratory infection, early stages. Do you know of any home remedies that can help? Okay, so what is a respiratory infection? Let's go over that first. Respiratory infection is when a certain bacteria takes hold in the lungs. And when a bacteria just start multiplying, it takes up the lung space. And so when air is brought in, that area that is filled with the infection cannot process the oxygen. And so the chameleon is having trouble breathing. This is why when a chameleon has a respiratory infection, you'll see it sticks its nose in the air. And what it's doing is it's straightening out its air tube, its trachea, so it can get air in a lot easier. And then it's going to start opening its mouth. And what that's doing is gulping in air, trying to get oxygen into those lungs. And the more the infection spreads, the harder it is for that chameleon to breathe. Now, the next question is going to be, what causes a respiratory infection? A super strain of bacteria? No, not usually. Usually it's the bacteria that the chameleon breathes in, day out, every day of their lives. What changes is their immune system. Because when the chameleon is breathing in this bacteria, that bacteria is detected on the lung surface, and the immune system attacks the bacteria and kills it and keeps it in check. And so it can never grow to the point where it's going to be damaging to the chameleon. What happens is in captivity, if you are giving incorrect husbandry, there are stresses on the chameleon's body, physical stresses, whether it's too hot, too cold, you're not giving them the right nutrition, or they're stressed because they're in a cage with another chameleon, or they see something that's stressing them out. And all of these stresses add onto each other and they start compromising the immune system. The immune system gets weaker and can't fight off the bacteria. This is the exact thing that happens when we go outside when it's cold. The cold doesn't give us the flu or a cold. Those viruses are floating around all the time and we're fighting them off. What gives us a cold is when our body is chilled, and so our immune system is weakened, and so it can't fight off the viruses as well as it could when we were healthy. And you notice when you're not sleeping well, you end up getting sick. And that's a stress that adds up night after night after night to the point where your immune system is just weakened to the point you can't fight off the bacteria or the viruses that are around you. And this is why husbandry of your chameleon is so important, why we keep talking about husbandry and we keep talking about micro stresses. This is why it's so important that you don't keep chameleons together. Yes, you can keep chameleons together and they will look like they're fine, but they are stressed. And we know, anybody who's been around chameleons long enough knows that stress builds up to compromise the immune system, and sooner or later, there's a bacterial or viral infection that kills one or both the chameleons. That's the effect of stress. So now, what happens if you see the signs of a respiratory infection? That would be the chameleon sticking its head, its nose up in the air, and then the chameleon gaping, opening its mouth, and then the chameleon's eyes closing while all this happens. By that time, it's so far advanced. Good luck. It's still worth trying to bring them back, but it's best. Like Diego says, I'm seeing the early signs. This is when you can actually do something about it. And what's required is antibiotics. This is medicine that attacks the bacteria, and you get this from your vet. This is something that you can only get with a prescription, so you do need to make a veterinary appointment. Now, Diego is asking about home remedies. Unfortunately, there is nothing that's going to be able to help the respiratory infection that you can get in your home. It's not like a topical sore that you can put some antibiotic cream on it. It's on the inside. When you have a respiratory infection, you need to go to the vet. And this is very important. Once you get those antibiotics and you start them on their treatment, number one, you got to continue the treatment for the full dosing that you were given. If you were told to do it for 15 days, you do it for 15 days, even if the chameleon gets better, because you will see the chameleon get better as the bacteria is killed. But if you stop before you're completely done, that bacteria isn't totally killed and it can come back. And the problem is when it comes back, the parts of the bacteria that have been resistant to the antibiotics will be what comes back. And so the antibiotics won't work again. So make sure you go through the entire prescription that you were given. Next, yes, you are starting antibiotics and that's going to kill the infection, but you need to figure out what started the compromise of the immune system in the first place and fix that, or else the infection is just going to come back. So you got to figure out, was it the temperatures? Was it the hydration? Was it emotional stress? What is it about the husbandry that you need to change? And this goes hand in hand with the antibiotics. Thank you very much for that question, Diego, and I wish your chameleon recovery. Next, also from Instagram, is Gabriel Negrich. What is the difference between Panther Chameleon locales besides color? Okay, background on this one. Panther chameleons come from a wide range around the northern tip of Madagascar, and for whatever reason, in these different locations, they have a different color palette. Now, we haven't figured out exactly why this is, we just know that it is. And so the question is a very good one. These chameleons are so widespread geographically, and they look different, and so we have populations. The thing about populations is that they all evolve independently. And so what have they evolved to? What are the differences? And it's more than just location, it's also elevation. Panther chameleons are found everywhere from sea level to 1,000 meters in elevation. And so you would think that if they are up at 1,000 meters, that those panther chameleons would want say a nighttime drop, or the incubation of the eggs would be different. Well, Gabriel, it appears at this time that there is no difference. And that is a strange answer for me to give because, like you are suspecting, I would suspect that there would be some minute differences. But I have talked to so many different breeders that deal with these different locales, and no breeder treats them differently. So I think it's still very valuable for us as a community to continue looking into what the micro differences in husbandry could be so we could do our job better. But Gabriel, at this time, it appears that there is no difference in husbandry between the different locales. The next question here is, what is the reason for your increased focus on panther chameleons? This comes from Ranunculus on YouTube. And what Christoph is talking about is for 8 years, I've had the Chameleon Academy podcast that shares husbandry and information about all chameleons. And I have suddenly started this Panther Chameleon podcast that focuses on panther chameleons. And so Christoph is asking, what's up with that? There's a lot of species of chameleons that I could do. And the answer is that the Chameleon Academy has become a mature outreach. And I deal with topics on that show that are pretty meaty. And it's for the people of the community. to make some decisions. I mean, we're talking about things like how do you avoid burnout if you're a breeder of chameleons? So if you've just started with chameleons, that's going to be way beyond that's like years into your future. So I wanted to make sure that I was serving the beginner community because, in all honesty, that is my passion. That is what I am doing here, is to help people who are just starting off with chameleons. And I realized that either I take my mature platform and I do beginner topics, which I could do, but then I'm not serving the established community, which I am doing with the Chameleon Academy. And so I wanted to have a platform where I could address the needs of the beginner. And yes, I hate to focus on just one species because I love so many different species. And yes, I could have 10 individual species podcasts. If I had 48, 72 hours in a day, maybe I could do that. But right now, I'm just starting off with the Panther Chameleon podcast. I want to help people that have Panther Chameleons, and I want them to be successful. And so that's you. I appreciate you being here, and please let me know how this is serving you. Now, there's an interesting follow-up question that some of you may be wondering. If the Panther Chameleon is so important that it's worth putting all of this effort towards, what about the rare species of chameleons? And more to the point, what is the value of continuing to work with rare species of chameleons? Why do we even need to bother with Calluma lanotum or Furcifer campani? And the answer to that is twofold. One is because they're all chameleons. We love chameleons, and we want to know about each species of chameleons just for the sake of knowing. Human beings are a species that likes to know, and so just for the sake of knowing, it's important. But there is a reason that affects panther chameleon keepers, even beginners. Because panther chameleons are pretty hardy. You can give them husbandry that's not ideal and they will still live. Even with husbandry that isn't 100% the latest husbandry, they will grow up healthy, they will breed, and they will live longer than they would in the wild. So, why do we need to go beyond that? The answer is that some of us in the community want to know how to do it better. And the way that we can find out how to do it better is we get better at the husbandry for all of these rarer chameleons that are not as hardy, that have more exacting requirements. And if we are able to figure out that species, we can then take a look at the things that we had to do to become successful with that species and see if applying that to panther chameleons would make husbandry better. We are now refining our chameleon husbandry to an art. A scientific art. But you as a beginner, don't worry about it. We have known how to keep panther chameleons healthy, breeding, and living longer than they would in the wild for a couple of decades now. And despite all of the drama you may see in the chameleon community about people arguing about how to take care of chameleons better, you don't need to get involved in those arguments. Just go with what your breeder shows you. Even if what your breeder says to do is different than what I'm saying to do. And that's okay. Any breeder who's been able to breed chameleons is going to be able to give you husbandry enough to keep that chameleon healthy. And it's important for you to do it the way your breeder does it because they're the ones who are going to be helping you through these critical first 6 to 12 months where you're getting your feet under you and figuring out all of this chameleon stuff. Once you're a little bit more advanced and you have more confidence, then you can start looking at these different husbandry methods and make your own decision. I will tell you right now that not every breeder agrees with the husbandry that I am showing on the Panther Chameleon podcast. And that's okay. Don't let that bother you. Allow yourself to be okay with different opinions in the community, and you don't have to choose sides. Just do it the way your breeder tells you to do it. Sit back and watch the different opinions. All you have to do is keep watching, keep listening, keep thinking, and before long you'll have enough experience under your belt that you can have an opinion and say, you know what, I want to try this way. Your key to success when you're starting off is just pick one person to listen to and don't take in 5 different opinions because it'll just drive you crazy. In fact, I'm going to say if it's working for you, don't change what you're going to do until you fully understand why it's working for you and why I'm saying something different. And that is the whole key behind what I am doing. I want you to understand the reason behind things. I explain it in excruciating detail over and over again so you can catch it. And just go to the website, chameleonacademy.com, and I have a huge treasure trove of information there for you to take a look at so you can understand. I don't want you to go out there and say, well, Bill said this. No. I explain it so you can own it. Once you understand it, you own it. You don't have to say, Bill said this. All right, folks, that's our question and answer session for this week. If you have a question that you'd like me to go over in what's probably going to be a monthly Q&A session, you can send me the question on my Instagram account at chameleon_academy or else via email, bill@chameleonacademy.com. Alternatively, you can come on to one of my live sessions, and I do 2 live sessions a week. Right now, my schedule is on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific on Instagram, and on Saturday, I do a YouTube live at 12 noon Pacific. That's been my schedule for a while now, but just to make sure, go to the homepage of chameleonacademy.com and take a look right up at the top. I give my latest schedule there. Now, if you could do me a favor on whatever platform you are listening to this, hit the like and subscribe on that platform because that helps me. It lets that platform know that this is a great place to send people who are interested in Panther chameleons. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Bill Strand signing off, and I'll see you next time.